Hey kids, welcome to Styles Rumble Pencil Extravaganza video series. Is 2 a series? I did a pencil video and I'm editing now and it's like an hour and a half long, so I'm editing down to something a little bit more manageable. But I'm gonna break it up into 2 pieces. So the first video, this video, is about the pencil tool, some of the basic stuff, how to scale it, how to use some of the little tools a little bit more efficiently. And I'm even gonna go into this option box here and talk about the line thickness box, some of the features that differ between 14, 15, stuff like that. So stay tuned for that. The next video is going to be about pencil textures. So throwing textures in, using the color override to manipulate the textures, getting that animated line look, like sticking around, that sort of thing. So I get asked about that all the time. So that's going to be the next video, which maybe I'll post a Wednesday. Who knows? As soon as it's edited, it will be yours. But please stay tuned for all your pencil learnings. It might seem simple, but apparently this is like a rabbit hole of information. What I wanted to do, because I don't like the pencil tool. I'm a brush person, because when I draw lines, I like to be able to play with them a little bit, sculpt my lines out, and then I just flatten them when I'm happy. And if I happen to do something a little bit messier, the little pieces around, I'm exaggerating obviously, I flatten it, and then I can invert my selection and delete out the little extra bits. But that's just my preferred workflow. But there are a lot of advantages to using the pencil tool. For example, this is a pencil line, so it has a central line that I can adjust, and then the width of the pencil stays the same. Whereas with the brush tool, you're limited to the outside of the stuff. So because I'm more of a drawing person, I'd rather draw something than muck around with contour lines. This isn't really a problem for me because I just redraw it. But a lot of people aren't into drawing. They have trouble with line weights. So this is perfect for people who struggle with keeping the line weight consistent, or if you're working on a show where things have to be very tight and the line weight is super important, or you need to use a textured line, anything like that, the pencil tool is going to be your best bet. Then we also have the problem, I am using 14 for this, but I am going to go over some of the new stuff in 15 later. So if you're interested in the new stuff, stay tuned for that. I'm just going to set up your fakey little eye here. So here's an eye. And what we like to do when we have eyes, to use the eye white as a cutter. So this is the standard practice for an eye. You'd have the eye white cut the pupil. But when you're using the brush, this cut line is super duper precise. And we render it, you can see these white pixels. And it's ugly. So if this outline here was a pencil line, and we can convert that, we can convert our pencil lines to brush strokes or our brush strokes to pencil lines, it's kind of bad. So be careful when you use it. But now you can see that the eye is actually getting cut farther away here, and we're able to move the line art above so that it cleans up that seam. So in rigging, the pencil tool has advantages as well. You're gonna get things looking a little bit cleaner because of the way that the pencil line works. So I often get asked, when do I use the pencil, when do I use the brush? If it's just me, I use the brush all the time. I love that brush. It's great. But in production, almost all rigs are done in pencil now, just because they have so many advantages to line consistency and stuff. That might change with some of the new changes that are coming to the brush tool, but for now, most rigs are done with the line. And I got on board with that because my rigging friends yell at me. So let's talk about some of the features of the pencil tool. First of all, if you want to change the size of your pencil tool, you can come over to your tool properties. You have all sorts of stuff you can do in here. Or you can just hold the letter O and just drag. So here I got a fat line, drag it in, here's a skinny line, here's a super fat line. So letter O, you're gonna be able to scale your brush very easily. That's like, if you don't learn anything else here today, you should be using your letter O to scale your brush. That's going to save you time. Let's open up our preferences. Blue. I'm going to change the shortcut for my pencil tool because let's go down to the pencil tool. Our pencil editor in 14, Alt W will get it. And that's really convenient for me. This Alt Flash, way too far. I don't like that. So I'm going to change my pencil tool to something I like. I'm maybe Alt-Shift-B, toggle backlight. Not a thing I use, so I'm going to replace that. So now B is for brush and Alt-Shift-B will give my pencil tool. I like that. That's something I can remember. But in 14, Alt W will give you the pencil editor tool, which is super useful. So you draw something with a brush, and then Alt W gives you pencil editor, and you can scale your stuff like this. So it just gives you access to the points. You can hold Control and put more points, or you can select some points and you can delete them. This stuff's all pretty great. You can also select some or all of them, and you can change the size over here. Weep, weep. You can change the minimum size so it's no longer tapered, or you can taper them right down. This is pretty convenient if your edges, say you have a guy here and a guy here, and you have to line them up, but they're not the same size for whatever reason. You can use your select snap. Hopefully you're familiar with your snap to contour guy there. And then you can boop, connect them up like that, boop, and it'll snap in. And then you can select all of them, or let's just select the small one. So we can see that 36.1 is the scale there. So I select all of it, paste in 36.1, and turn on my maximum size. And they're going to be exactly matching. I mean, you could eyeball it if you don't need it to be ultra precise. You can also type it in if you want it to be exact. So if we wanted to connect these two for realsies, grab our select tool, come over here and grab this little tape guy, merging our pencil lines. Boop. And now it's one big line. They've been taped together. Let's go back over here. So let's just go into our tool properties, and we'll start at the top and we'll get down to the more useful stuff down here. So you start here with your size, basic like uppy downy thing, and your smoothing. But if you click on this button, then you can go in there farther and you can change your minimum size down to the 0. So then you're going to get the maximum amount of pen pressure sensitivity that you can. I like super tight little crisp corners. I don't like roundy. This bugs me when I'm drawing. I like super tapered stuff. Your smoothing, so if you turn this up real high, if you have a shaky hand and you're drawing all over the place, it's going to smooth that out for you. So depending on how much help you need smoothing. Personally, I like to leave that down real low. I don't like it on 0 because then it adds points, like too many points. But the contour smoothing can help with that. This is contour smoothing on 100, and this guy's contour smoothing on 0. So you can see that 0 adds more points and 100 adds fewer points. So having a little bit of smooth and a ton of contour smoothing is going to give you the least amount of points and the least amount of warp. Because when you turn your smoothing and contour smoothing up real high, even if you draw a super fluid line, it's gonna warp. See a warp right there? You can't draw smooth enough for this thing. Woo! Oh, that one warped a lot. And then your shape lines up down here. So let's look at that a little bit. If you just make a dude default, you're going to have rounded ends. You can change those to flat ends and draw something with flat ends, or you can have one flat and one round. But you can also, once you've created a line, select the line, and then you can change it afterwards. So now I can square out my ends, or I can round out my ends. This is really good if you're rigging, because oftentimes when you're cutting lines up like this and you're breaking pieces off, you get these crazy ends and they'll be flat. So then you can come in and play around with this and round it out or square it out, whatever you need it to do to make your rig work. The next thing is your join. So you can have a rounded join, which gives you a roundy corner. You can have a miter, which is a pointy join, or you can have a bevel, which is square, like an angled beveled edge. So another super useful thing if you're rigging or you're designing, because you want your lines to be on purpose. If you have pointy elbows, then you don't want round elbows. So do your corners on purpose, basically. And this is good if you're a baby designer, to be aware of what your joins actually look like, whether they're pointed or they're straight. This is something that actually is important when you're designing or when you're working on a show that has a particular style. So the next section is the presets, and this is not something I've used a lot, but it has preset tapers. So you've got a tapered end, medium tapered. So let me just do some of these. If you want to see what they're going to look like, you can go into stroke view. Over in this corner you have a little options box, and you're going to be able to play with the shape of them. Large view gives you kind of a little preview of it. But instead of like the generic pencil will just give you a straight line. If you hit the tapered one, it's going to give you a fatty in the middle, or it's going to give you like a fat at the end. So you can tell these lines what you want them to look like before you draw them. So you got a little hill, you got a little dip. There's a lot of stuff you can do in here, especially if you're using the lines or the ellipse tool, you can do it with that too. So here we've got a medium tapered ellipse. Rather than going around and mucking around with your pencil editor later, you can actually kind of tell it what to do in the beginning, which is not something I've used before, but it might be something I use now in the future. Woo. Knowing it's there. Woo. And of course you don't need to do perfect circles. Holding Shift and Alt will give you a perfect circle from the center. So regular circle, it comes from where you click, and then you can scale it up like this. If you hold Shift, it's going to stay a circle. If you hold Alt, it's going to come from the center. So regular one, Alt one, and you hold Shift Alt, you're going to get a perfect circle from the center. So just knowing your hotkeys there is going to save you a real heartache. Rectangle, same thing. You can get tapered rectangles. Look how cute these are. So if you have to do some 70s wallpaper, you don't need to hand taper every single square. That would be such a pain in the butt. You can use your pre-modeled tapers. You can also save one. It's not something I've used much before, but I mean, it's there and it's huge. I don't know why I've never noticed it before. It's kind of sad. It's only been 10 years. Next down the line. This stuff's super useful, and a lot of it's similar to the brush. So you have your draw behind, and that, of course, you draw a line. And if you want to draw behind, you press the draw behind, and then you can draw behind it. You don't have to draw and then copy and paste or something like that. You can do this. Hey, now I have Happy Caterpillar. Yay! Here we have automatically create color art. Let's go into the drawing tool for this because we can isolate our layers. Whee! So here I create my line art. Now I can go to my color art and it's created a stroke line. So it's not, you can't see it. If I turn off my strokes, the letter K disappears, reappears, and that's in case you want to do something like an eye, we'll say. So you create your eye ellipse, and then you go into color art. It's going to create the stroke automatically, so then you can come in here and fill it rather than copying this and pasting it into here. I just copy and paste because that's just my natural workflow, but maybe you want to work this way. Who knows? It's there, so it's good to know. Auto flatten, that's pretty much what you think it is. If I draw an X, I can take each piece and I can separate them. If I turn on my auto flatten, then it's one piece, and I can create a creepy little starfish. So it's good to have that on when you need it and not on when you don't need it. So the next one is auto close gap, and this is on by default, and I hate auto close gap so much because it has a mind of its own. So here, if I draw a circle, if you have strokes on, it's a little bit less sensitive, but you can see that it's closing the gaps anywhere the line ends. So now if I draw another line, it's closing this gap, but I don't want those to close. See, this one didn't close and this one did close. It's just so inconsistent. I would rather close my own gaps. I know everybody's going to disagree with me on that, but this thing just, I find it's a nuisance, but it's on by default, so be aware. Down here, line building mode. This is really great. So if you want to draw a line and then draw another line and then draw another line to get your circle, it's going to automatically connect those at the ends. So this is really convenient. If you have to draw a whole face and you want to draw it in pieces like this, instead of having to go back and then make sure that these are lined up real good and then taping them back together and then changing your taper here, you can use your auto line builder and it's going to connect everything. Wow, that makes me happy. I like auto line builder a lot, but you want to turn it off when you're not using it, because the one thing about it that I don't like, so here I've drawn a circle and you can see the auto close gap has closed it twice, so I have to delete these and then yeah, so no pencil tool. But with this line builder on, if I'm like, oh, maybe I could do this, oh, that one just didn't build a line. So it's going to add to your shape. This might be what you want. It might not be, but just know this is how it works. So here I went too far past and it didn't create a shape. So it's a little bit of a weird tool. Like you can do this sort of stuff, which is really handy when you want to do that. But if you wanted to draw something next to it, then you'd have to turn this off and turn your gaps off. So it's good to know that these tools are here and what they do. So the next one, auto adjust thickness. This is like a paintbrush that you can use to fatten stuff up. Ooh, it's not working very fast. Let me zoom in. I'm painting so fast. So you can paint fatness into your brush. Paint, 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 paint. So if you want to add tapers later, that's another handy little one if you want to add in a little bit of taper without going through with your pencil editor and mucking around with these contour lines. In your pencil editor, you have this guy. This one here, the line pushing mode, highlight strokes drawn over an existing line section that will move that section in the direction of the highlight stroke. So what that means is you can paint this area and then go up, and it's going to shove your thing up. Let me zoom in. So that shove up, shove up, shove up. So you paint and then go down. Paint down, 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 down. It only wants to go up. It was working, I swear. So this only down, up, down, down. So you can see it's not super consistent. Neat. You can change the color of your like little painty thing, like this instead of yellow can be another color. And then there's also a last guy, which is not over here, but it is over here. So under your pencil tool, you have the smooth editor, and that works in a similar way to that push thing. So you're able to adjust your minimum size and your maximum size, and then you can paint in stuff. All right, so we're gonna need something a little bit less smooth to use our smooth editor. So here we can paint in smooth. So this is a little bit jaggedy. I can paint in some smooth. I can turn up my smooth so I can paint any of the kinks out of my little dealy here. Straighten it right out. It eventually reaches a place where it's like, okay, this is as straight as your settings allow me to get. So let's see how much we can smooth this. Smooth editor, and we just paint the smooth here. Boop, boop, boop. So that's on maximum smoothing, but you can gently smooth your stuff if you want to with this paintbrush, this smooth editor paintbrush. Often it's more useful to use ellipses or rectangles or even a polyline. So the polyline it's a little bit, if you're an Illustrator kid, this is going to feel a little bit more comfortable for you. They're snapping to the contour by default. You can tape them together, which sometimes doesn't work out. You can see right there, you're getting some weird smoothing issues as you tape them together. That's something that's always prevalent when you're doing this like taping of things together. Bloop. Sometimes it's worth your time to create a circle first and then adjust your contours after. You get a sleeve that's very generic sleeve-like. It might be faster to just do this. So start with an ellipse. Especially I put it on a hotkey, or you can do that and extrude. Boop. Alt-click is going to square off your points. Alt-click. Control-click is adding a point. And you can select and delete a point with your delete. One thing that the local designers pointed out, if you have something with a bunch of points like this, if you grab the line, not the actual point, but the line, and you drag it, it will also smooth out your line. So here we have a ton of points. If we just kind of move it a little bit, it's going to delete out a whole bunch of those points and just simplify it. So this is great if you're working with something here that has too many points. You can just try giving it a little shove, and if it can ease out the math a little bit, here it's going to take out one of those points, two of those points. So this is something that's really convenient if you just want to tidy up your line art a little bit without going in and manual deleting a whole pile of points. So good. All right, so I think I've covered most of these tools. It's really just something that you spend the time to hover over these things, and it'll tell you what it is. Auto adjust thickness, and then read what it does. Or this guy is the line building mode. Keep your tooltips on and read them. Why don't people read them? Oh, let's just switch over to 15 real quick, because there are new features in 15. And if you guys don't have 15, I'm so sorry. I love you. Loop down here, autofill, he's new. So we can just draw a circle and it's gonna fill it in. Whee! Yay! That could be useful at times. This guy here, he's gonna trim your extra lines. So blue, it's gonna trim that stuff. That one didn't trim. Beep. Because it didn't overlap. That one didn't trim. What's the criteria of a trim here? You gotta, like, for serious, go past it, but then it doesn't trim this one. So, auto trim, I don't know, you really have to go out of your way. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. What is your criteria for trimming? So I probably wouldn't use that. I'd just trim it off myself. Because, I mean, if you do this, oh, now it's auto trimming. So you can just hit T and then delete. That works as well. It does clean that part up, though. Is that connected? Let's see what happens when we straighten our ends. No, it's no more connected than cutting it with your cutter. So, hit or miss on that one. What's this one do? Align handles after trim. Ooh, that's sounding a little bit more interesting. Okay, so here's one thing I started talking about earlier. The pencil editor and the center line editor. Now, like, if you hit Alt W, you get the center line editor, you don't get the pencil editor. So I gotta go to these preferences and see what is happening there. Center line editor is Alt W. Pencil editor is 8. Why would you change an existing Alt W belongs to pencil editor? Replace. I don't know why they'd replace the pencil editor tool hotkey with a more different tool. That's such a tiny inconvenience in my life. So the center line editor tool, let's make you 8. How do you like that center line? So, oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm getting sold on this now. When you add the align handles with the trim extra lines, and you know how to draw a circle. Okay, I've been doing this for way too long, but those things are worth playing with. So there's that. The other new feature is, of course, before when you had a brush, one of the things that I mentioned was inconvenient about it is that you couldn't maintain the size, but now that's what this, you're 8 now. So that's what this center line editor is for. You can click on it, and now this is a brush with a center line, so it's working like a line. Works pretty well, I have to say. Woo. They're at the end, but I mean, that's really not a big deal considering how it's maintaining that size. That's super cool. Yep. All right, so let's talk about some of the drawing tools in here that we have available to us. This is in 14. In our advanced tab of 14, we have these guys down here, line thickness, adjust pencil line thickness. So if we turn this on, what I'm going to do is create a second one here, and I'm going to on, off. This one has the adjust pencil thickness on, and this one has it off, just like the regular one. So off is default size. The one thing is when you turn it on, it will affect the size. So if you make it too thin, 2 is actually regular proportions to what you've drawn it at. That's something to keep in mind. But when I scale it up, the on is going to stay thin and the off is going to scale up. Whereas scale is very small, this one is going to scale down, but this one's going to stay the same size. So even though this looks massive, if I unplug the off, you can see that it's the same default size that we started with. It just looks very big because we've scaled it down. So this is something that's useful if you're scaling things up, I think, and you want your lines to thin out, but it can be a problem if you scale things down very small. So I think this feature would be a little bit better if it had a node. So if we could have an adjust pencil thickness node we could put at the bottom of a rig. That way, if we need to scale a rig up really large, it would have that option available to like turn it on, because going through your entire inventory of drawings and turning them on or off is going to be a real nuisance if you have this huge drawing thing. But obviously if you have a character that shrinks down very small, then you don't want that on because your lines are just going to be so thick your character is going to look like a blob of outline. So it can be useful at times, but it's situational and it's going to be tricky if you have a ton of stuff to do. If you do get a call, say like a retake where your character is super zoomed in and they say your lines are too fat, you might have an easier time coming in through here than redoing your line work. It really depends on how much stuff you have to do. And then you can adjust the scale of the line here in your drawing. So now we come over to 15. We'll open up the options box. And instead of the advanced tab containing that information, we actually have a line thickness tab now, which holds that adjust pencil thickness option. So we can turn that on or off. But down here we have a deformation window, which allows us to preserve line thickness. So what that does We're going to add a little deformer here. Remember, holding Alt is going to allow you to adjust these things independently. Man, nothing irks me more than getting an envelope deformer on a rig that has nothing to do with the actual contours of the rig. That makes me crazy. Why bother? Copy and create a new one. So this one with the preserved line thickness, we can muck around with this a whole lot. So no matter what we do with this guy, our line is staying pretty regular. Bloop. This guy. Alright, so I mucked around with it a little bit, and you can see here I was able to break this thing with the feature off. So my preserved line thickness is off here, and I've cracked it. If I turn that on, it's going to clean that up. So you can see here where it's gotten a little fat, it's thinning it back out and it's keeping its original shape. So I've seen some good stuff come out of this feature, preserving the line thickness. I'm not going to spend a ton of time trying to figure out how to break these lines, but it is a handy feature for that sort of stuff, making sure that your lines are just a little bit more consistent. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all those things internet people ask you to do, and I'll see you next week with more pencil tool.